Biden's yet-to-be-announced re-election campaign. Apparently, he's going to lean heavily on an army of social media influencers, we're told. Partnerships across several platforms, including TikTok. The online stars might even get their own briefing room in the White House. Mike, how is this possible that he's leaning on TikTok so much when we've heard from several governors that this is a national security risk? I don't think he's going to get rid of TikTok in America going into this 2024 race. Do you?
No, no chance. It's something like 3/4 of the American youth are spending more time on TikTok than Instagram, Facebook, and all other social media combined, and more time than any other kind of social network ever invented. And I have to say, I don't know if TikTok is the answer for the Republicans, but the focus for the Democrats with mail-in voting, ballot harvesting, and now with social media is to target the low-propensity voter and to turn out as many of the people that may remotely agree with what they have to say to vote. And the GOP should be focusing on the exact same thing in different methods. I mean, elections don't come down to changing the hearts and minds anymore. It's how many people that agree with you can get out to the polls. And the underperformance in the midterms is a direct result of this. It's getting the Democrats now have a built-in base with, like I just mentioned, with the mail-in voting, ballot harvesting, and all these things from COVID they were able to carry over. So they're going to have a good turnout no matter how popular or unpopular or how low of approval ratings Joe Biden is in the next election. And so you have to appreciate the focus that the Democrats are giving to those people that are actually going to help them win elections. The GOP should be doing the same.
But how disingenuous to lean on TikTok while this conversation is active about banning TikTok because of national security issues and surveillance from communist China?
Maria, if it wasn't for double standards, the left would have no standards at all.
All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, House Oversight Committee member.
Yeah, Maria, the using of this language to label people extremists is nothing more than cover to allow them to surveil and harass people who are guilty of political wrongthink. The FBI has become a political hit force for the left to go after their enemies. And so what you are seeing when these things come out are no different than going after concerned parents showing up at a school board meeting. Right, and telling them that they are domestic terrorists. What they'll do is they'll use someone like the Southern Poverty Law Center to come in and say, label somebody with some, normal conservative thought, advocating for a smaller government or exposing corruption. Well, now this person is an extremist. We need to get ahead of them in case they commit some sort of violence, so we can surveil them and then maybe jam them up on, some sort of process crime. You saw that with the special counsel. It's kind of the MO, and then you're now seeing it reach the point of ridiculousness, as Monica just mentioned, in the case of Douglas Mackey, who was making memes online, and the Southern District of New York that prosecuted him could not point to a single person that that took that seriously or was a victim, and still this guy's looking at some serious jail time unless they win on appeal. And even if they win on appeal, the process is still the punishment. Going through this for years of his life, it's just these are designed to harass people and intimidate those that do not agree with them and do not get in line.
That's right. I mean, you're either on the team or you're not on the team. And if you're not on their team, you could get prosecuted. Monica, there was a great op-ed from Mark Penn in the Journal last activity that you would expect from something like the Chinese Communist Party, which is also part of it, but you would not expect it from Democrats who are running these federal agencies. How disturbing that our most important federal agencies have been compromised, like the FBI and the DOJ, because of leadership in the White House.
Maria, what we've seen over the last 2 years of the Biden administration is the shifting of domestic surveillance, anti-terrorism, moving from Islamic extremists and other factions that may cause harm to our country to basically your rank and file Trump supporters. It's the weaponization of the Patriot Act and all these other tools that the national security state has against its own citizens who simply don't agree with them on the way the country should move forward.
You're right. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're zeroing in on markets. We're looking. Welcome back. It is time for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me right now is Michael Lee strategy founder Michael Lee and my capital management chief equity strategist Chris Grisanti. Great to see you guys. Chris, thanks for joining the conversation. Mike, kicking things off with you. In the market that is flat really this morning ahead of a big and important week of data. Layoffs in the tech sector hitting record highs this year. More than 100,000 job cuts reported so far in 2023. Experts warning companies like Apple, Meta, Salesforce will face long-term consequences for removing middle management in mass layoffs. Mike, this on top of the jobs numbers out last week, which did slow from a month earlier. What are you expecting in terms of jobs rest of the year?
You know, Maria, I think we are a month or two away from a negative non-farm payrolls print. You saw in the ADP payrolls, which I would say, I would say has more semblance to something that looks like reality versus the non-farm payrolls. I've said time and again, I think something's wrong with their statistical models. But that being said, it's not just the big tech firms laying off middle management. If you look at the NFIB small business hiring plans, we are at the lowest level since right after COVID, and you're going to start to see this worldwide. And what particularly interesting has happened since the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank is bank lending has fallen off a cliff. You're looking at some of the largest declines in lending on a week-over-week, month-over-month, year-over-year basis since COVID, looking more like a 2008 where banks are tightening their belts. So I have to imagine we're going to see a lot more layoffs to come. Typically, the labor market is a lagging indicator, and the unemployment rate bottoms right before a recession starts. So I think the next big shoe to drop from an economic standpoint is this unemployment, and then hopefully inflation falls off shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and we are seeing a slowing in the economy from so many macro items, but we're going to hear it firsthand now, Chris, from the first quarter reporting season. FactSet tells us that earnings in the first quarter, our expenses are going to be a critical gauge, right? We're going to want to know what the expense side of the business is, particularly as rates go higher. We've still got the Fed out there, Mike. We're expecting another rate hike at the next meeting, the May meeting. So how much is the story going to turn to higher rates and whether or not certain companies can actually continue growing in the face of much higher rates today?
Yeah, look, I think earnings estimates are way too high. Historically, after you have a collapse in housing and the other leading economic indicators and manufacturing, the way that we have, the following calendar year has a decline of 15% year-over-year earnings. You know, we're only looking at a decline. I'm sorry, the analysts right now, the consensus is for growth of about 2%. So I don't see how that's possible for this year. So I think we're going to see earnings estimates and see a massive credit event, something that really forces the Fed's hand. They are determined to fight inflation, as they should. So I don't know how many more hikes we're going to have, maybe one more, maybe two more, maybe no more. But for them to cut rates, we're going to need to see some other bank defaults or some other massive commercial real estate portfolios default, something along those lines that sets off a chain reaction that will force the Fed's hands. So until we see that, rates are going to be higher, regardless of the economic data that comes out, unless inflation somehow falls off a cliff. And with oil prices rising again, I'm not sure we're going to see that.
Well, I think that's the key. We'll be watching the oil component to know. But unfortunately, Michael, when you have this kind of doubt about federal agencies, and this all is going back to the weaponization, people do not trust why these documents were leaked.
Yeah, well, look, I think the American public has been gaslit into believing this war in Ukraine is a good idea and it's vital to the U.S. interests and that nothing bad is happening. Where in reality, the Ukrainian has lost like 100,000 troops. And I mean, this is a tough war that the U.S. is instigating on every level. We have been talking about this for a few months now, Maria. Nobody's out there saying this is the path to the end. This is the way, this is the off-ramp for this war. Okay, all we're hearing is once Putin leaves and we need to fight him and Putin is bad. And so nobody's out there talking about, well, you know, I think it's 8 million people, 8 million migrants from Ukraine have been migrated across the world, in addition to the civilian loss of life, the complete destruction of their infrastructure, as well as 100,000 casualties in the army that I believe is only 200,000 strong. So where is this going to go? What's next? How much more support do you want from the U.S.? And so I think some of these leaks pointed out that this has not gone very well for the U.S. I think Russia has a lot more mettle when it comes to outlasting the opposition here, particularly in how unpopular this war has become amongst a lot of Americans and a lot of the West. So it's really, I mean, if these were fake, as both Russia and Vladimir Zelensky claim, why is the Department of Justice and an interagency effort being set up to go after and find the leaker? And again, more craziness from the left here. Nobody's analyzing what's in the data and making an assessment of what's going forward there. Who could possibly leak against the Biden administration? How do we find them and put them in jail?
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Mike, unfortunately, this is one of the reasons that the U.S. is in decline, and it pains me to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, you have a bunch of whiny Marxists where the ends will always justify the means. And as we've said before, if it wasn't for double standards, the left would have no standards at all. And by the way, this has nothing to do with abortion. This has the FDA not following their own rules and a pill that has wild side effects that they don't want to disclose. And so it went through the court process to be taken away. And instead of the health and safety of the American public, she's concerned about worshiping at the altar of child sacrifice.
All right, Monica, Mike, stay right there. The next hour of Mornings with Maria begins. In Joe Biden's bank account, Hunter Biden's bank account. This is a very serious issue, but the Biden administration refuses to talk about it.
Of course they do. And it's if they had nothing to hide and everything, that all these business dealings were above board, they would be producing document after document after document and say, look, these Republicans, this is just a witch hunt. There's nothing to see here, but they're stonewalling. They won't answer questions. And that's because it's obvious. OK, how does somebody with no private equity experience get a $1 billion sole mandate from the Bank of China? Okay, let alone someone with no private equity experience who has a debilitating crack habit to the point where his teeth rot out. Okay, how does something like that happen so his family can profit to the tune of somewhere between $30 and $50 million off that without some sort of favors exchange? The Chinese Communist Party, well, we don't like them. They are not stupid. They would not give this money to Hunter Biden. They might not even give $1 billion sole mandates to Apollo or Blackstone or the greatest private equity firms in the world, yet somehow Hunter Biden is part of something like that. What did Joe Biden promise them in return for this? So that's
exactly right.
I don't know if we'll get the answer to that ever, but I think that's what they're looking for, and they should continue to dig.
And how about the shameful mainstream media? How many years did we hear the media attacking Trump about Russia collusion? What does Russia have on Trump? What did he do for Russia? And yet not a word about any of this.
Yeah, you know, the left, Maria, is